of Sluggo, slant and go.
College football expert Joel Klatt. Tell America the name of your favorite podcast.
It's called Sluggo.
Whoa, I'm blinded by Casey the Beef Creek. And what is that you're wearing? Is it a Christmas tree? Is that what I heard?
Where?
The green thing.
Oh, my shirt. Yeah, I just picked it up out of my pile over here for the show.
Nice.
Your pile. All right. Well, Casey, you were traveling
Show
today.
pile.
Show pile. In other words, dirty clothes, right? Dirty laundry.
You call them dirty. I call them show pile.
I call them well used.
Right.
Beef, you were on the road today, bud?
Not really. Tomorrow I head on the road. I'm home today. I was on the other side in America for a little bit today, just working, getting a haircut, that kind of thing, because I'm going to go face customers the next 2 days. So figured I'd get Shagalicious kind of worked out a little bit,
Recent customers, all those customers have been emailing you for the last month.
It's true.
Yep.
It's true.
After him.
And Locks, you're all better.
I'm back. It's hard to believe. 1 week ago, I could barely inhale, and here I am. You can hear my voice again. Sad for you. Good for me, though.
Not sad for me, because I want to hear you cry when give out the picks, my picks that are going to win this week.
Okay. Well, everybody's got to start somewhere, Marty.
Yeah. And I'm starting on the bottom, by the way. I am below Beef. I'm not sure what could be worse than that, but I'm below Beef.
Did you guys see this shirt I got? I got a sponsor I picked up right here.
What's it say?
It's just Champion right here. It's just, they sent it to me for free. They knew I was coming, so
I thought that's a
get in front of it.
Different way of spelling douchebag.
Speaking of show pile.
That's right, the show pile. I got the W hat on too.
Nelson checks in and says Casey celebrating 0-2 in that jersey.
That's true.
Jared Clark, will there be any shuffling around the O-line this weekend? I don't know. Maybe JP I haven't heard that either. Maybe JP will jump in the comments, or Houston Burn is usually into those things. Thanks for the chiming in, Jared, and thanks for watching. We'll get to Clemson in just a couple of minutes. Hey, am I the only one who gets the title of this show? It's called Little Mr. Can't Be Wrong. Do you guys know where I got that from? You might be too young.
Little Miss can't be wrong.
Yeah. Casey, the Beef Cregan answers their first trivia question. But Zach Locks Parker is 6-0 against the spread. Notice all the jinx I'm throwing his way.
Hey, streak's got to end. It's fine, but we're going to ride it as long as we can.
Here's the thing. If you went like 500 the rest of the year, you'd have a really good record at the end of the year. But we're going to see if we can get you under 500 for the rest of the year. And there, your buddy knows, Case.
Yeah.
Spin doctors, absolutely. Zach,
he's my little Irish friend. He's Irish. He doesn't like the Irish, but he's Irish.
I thought that was a requirement.
It is to be a friend.
No, to be Irish was to like the Irish. That's well, we're off and rolling tonight. And just because we're off and rolling tonight, fellas, we are going to play America's favorite game show. Do you know what that is?
I believe went to my high school. I just clicked on them by accident.
Everybody went to your high school.
Everybody went there.
Except you two schmoes.
It's called You Two Schmoes, and this is where Casey has to zip it, and Zach and I talk about Casey's high school, and no internet is allowed. Zach has to use his brain, which scares everybody. Okay, Zach, today, you probably know this one because Casey humble brags about it 6 times a week. Little Mikey Malone is a Seton Hall prep graduate. Little Mikey grew up. What does little Mikey do now? Is little Mikey the head coach of the Denver Nuggets? Is he a bartender at Cheers, or your third option is Little Monkey. Did he grow up to be Post Malone?
Now that is interesting because I don't know Post Malone's real name, but
I mean, this looks like a Seton Hall prep valedictorian.
More than this does.
clean
What
cut.
did little Mikey grew up? What does little Mikey do for a living?
I honestly don't know, but I'm gonna use my just my guessing skills here and just go with A. Coach of would you say the Nuggets?
Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not positive, but it seems like it makes more sense than Post Malone, and I know it's not Cheers.
It is correct.
Yay!
You
Killing
are
it on
correct.
this game
You
show.
want another little nugget about Michael Malone?
Yeah.
Yes.
He was my coach in many, many summers of Seton Hall Prep Pirate basketball camp.
Oh, that's
Really?
cool. That's actually cool.
And his dad is Brendan Malone, who was a longtime assistant coach in the NBA for a long, long, long time. Yeah, super, super, super guy.
Cool.
And I was
Would
just
probably still call me Little Cregan to this day if I was around him. I hadn't seen or talked to him in many, many, many years, but he would probably still call me Little Cregan. My dad taught him, so
Awesome.
we do know.
You know, when I was looking through the list, it's funny you say that, Casey. I was looking through the list of distinguished Seton Hall graduates, both of them, and
You got them both.
before I got to Mikey Malone, I came across somebody named Cregan. Is that a relation to you? I
No.
can't remember the first name.
I think it's Mark Cregan. He's the head of the president of a school in Massachusetts.
Okay.
See, we know people from New Jersey know everyone from New Jersey, and then if you even get more granular, people from Seton Hall Prep know Seton Hall Prep people, which is another funny thing. This isn't a Seton Hall Prep podcast, but maybe one day we can branch off to it.
Turn into it.
But Mark Cregan is actually my brother's name as well,
Right.
so it's spelled the same way, I believe.
That's why I wondered if that was a relation to you, because I guess I remember you telling me about your brother Mark, or I've seen it on Instagram or something.
Yeah.
But
He's a priest, not my brother. Mark, the other one.
No.
there were a significant number of priests on that list, or cardinals, or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, Kevron says, "Good evening. Let's go Clemson Tigers." And Jared Clark says, "Prayers out to the Brzee family." That's for sure. Jared, thanks for your thoughts. So U2 Schmoes, I think Zach is also undefeated in U2 Schmoes, because I heard when
Killing it.
lightning struck, he got that one right too.
Yep.
Anyway, 2-0 U2 Schmoes, America's favorite game show. I love it so much. I did, 15 seconds of research. It was worth every second of it
Impressive.
to see Casey's reaction to U2 Schmoes. Okay, fellas, last week Clemson beat Furman, and I know there are some folks here that want to talk about it. We don't have to talk about it much because it's kind of boring. And I found myself turning away from Clemson for the first time in a long time to watch. I don't even remember, but it was a more interesting game in that window. Clemson did some good things, did some bad things. Dabo called out the defense on Tuesday in his press conference. I happened to be here. So, press conference. Let me turn this on. And he called him out, talking about loafs. Actually mentioned Miles Murphy by name, somebody we haven't seen much of in 2 games, right? Coming into the season, he was a top 10 NFL draft prospect. Really hasn't done a lot in 2 games. Dabo called him out by name. Well, didn't say he was loafing. He said, but if Miles Murphy loafs, blah. So I was like, okay, threw that name out there. Anyway, Casey, any takeaways from last Saturday's game for you besides 2 games in 5 days is not a good idea, no matter who you're playing?
Yeah, and that's, I think, you can make excuses for your team. I think a lot of people make excuses for their team, and I would be one of those people who does. But I've seen 4 good quarters out of Clemson in 2 games on both sides, I think, combined. 2 good quarters of offensive football against Georgia Tech, 2 good quarters of offensive football against Furman. And outside of that, it hasn't really been that fun to watch, and I don't blame you for turning it off. I feel the same way for defense. I thought the defense was great to come out of the gates against Georgia Tech, and then coming out of the gates against Furman, they looked like holes everywhere.
Yeah.
Just could not stop the screens. I mean, it's now the blueprint. It's like that tight end shuffle pass that Pittsburgh tried to expose Clemson on. Now we're talking screens and slants that are going to expose the defense, and it makes sense because the defensive front getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, so the ball's got to come out fast. So hopefully there's some adjustments made this week. Obviously, Dabo's on them, and we'll see. It was a ho hum game. I think you put it on the sheet here.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what it was.
It was just nothing happening in the second half. Locks, I know the 3:30 Eastern time window is your SEC window.
Right.
So I don't know how much of this game that you saw, but what did you think of the Furman Clemson game?
Yeah, I did watch. You're probably talking about Tennessee Pittsburgh. That was a very good matchup for sure. It went overtime. It's a fun game to watch. But I did flip over back and forth. I was like a wild man with the remote control as usual. But they gave up 256 yards of passing, like Casey was saying, and a lot of dink and dunks. So you got to feel a little bit bad for them because it's a product of the schedule. What's going to happen this week? Louisiana Tech. Oh boy! And then next thing you know, here comes Wake. Here comes NC State. So they better get right, and it's good of Dabo to call them out. I mean, I'm sure it's nothing he wanted to do, but there's a reason behind it, to get everybody to wake up and get ready to roll. We got some big games coming up here before we get another break here between, like I said, between Wake and NC State. So they, they'll get it together. I'm sure it's nothing that they haven't been through before with this type of opening schedule. So. I expect another sleepy time this coming week too, though.
34 and a half. The last I looked, none of us picked this game, so I'm expecting.
Casey picked it. He did pick it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh yes, La Tech.
Yeah.
La Tech. 34 and a half points. We'll get then on that note. We'll get to the pick in just a minute, but I'm expecting another. Beef will tell us if they'll cover that spread or not, but I'm expecting a very similar type of game. I saw some of the Louisiana Tech Missouri game in week, I don't remember if it's 0 or 1, but a couple of weeks ago, and they held close for about a half, and then Missouri just stomped them in the second half. So I don't know what to expect. Beef, what do you get? Well, let's don't talk about it because you got a pick coming up in that game. Locks, what do you think is going to happen this week? Same thing?
Yeah, and it's. I think it'll probably be like more of just a half game. Klubnik will probably get some more snaps, I would imagine. Just to get everybody, make sure everyone's healthy going into the conference games coming up. So it's a tough game to pick. I wouldn't have touched it. Casey must have an inside line on it. I don't know. It always drives me crazy when they start pulling these guys out. You never know. The backups are going to come in and be like all ready to go and go down and score, or if the offensive play calling is still going to be there for them to have the opportunity to score because you don't want to run them up. So, yeah, it's going to be kind of probably a 30-point win somewhere in that region, and I don't expect a lot of competition, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it.
Casey has an insight because it's a little known fact. All 240 players on both teams went to Seton Hall Prep. Zach needs an extra screen so he can have it dedicated to Clemson. That was hard last week. That was very hard last week. I never turn Clemson off. I watched something on my phone before I turned Clemson off, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. There's too much good going on, and we're going to talk about some of that good in a minute. But first, I wanted to say this. We often we often say negative things about DJ. DJ had a good game Saturday. Now, it was Furman. We're not going to confuse them with Georgia, right, or one of the better defenses. But he had a good game. He had some big-time throws, according to Pro Football Focus. His completion percentage, his adjusted completion percentage was in the high 70s or 80s, if I remember. DJ had a good game Saturday. Casey, did you see any of that goodness in the Furman game for DJ?
I sure did, and I think some of it, some of the talk of Cade Klubnik kind of quelled a little bit in his two series that he had with the ones. I did. I saw some really good things from DJ, and then I actually watched some. I didn't do the film study, but I watched some guys that were. Mike Glennon is a guy that does film study on Twitter, and he broke down DJ a couple times, and he made it look like DJ was a top quarterback not top 10 quarterback in the country, but a top quarterback, and things are slowing down for him. So I did see it. I thought he was making a little bit more decisive throws. Again, you got to get some help from the wide receivers. He didn't get bailed out at all last season, and it's starting again this season. One wide receiver in particular that I know Houston is not high on, but he's just, he's hitting receivers in the hands. I'm sorry, you got to make those catches.
Yep. According to Pro Football Focus, when he's got a clean pocket, he's 34 of 49.
And for as much as you get your stat there, for as much as the offensive line has really been maligned because they haven't been able to open the holes for the 3 running backs, I truly believe it. I'm not schooled in offensive line. I really believe he's had time to throw. He really has had time to throw. Pass protection seems like not that it's wonderful. It's the top pass protecting team in the country, but he's had time. And I mean, if they can open holes, this offense could go. I think that's what we're waiting on.
His adjusted completion percentage with the clean pocket is 81.3%. He's got 5 drops. So I don't know. The numbers tell me one thing. My eyes in the first game told me something else, but he looked a lot better on Saturday. Locks, what do you think?
Yeah, I wrote down the stats where we started 21 and 27 for 231 yards. So you got to figure that's going to build some confidence, which is what he needs exactly. So just to, like you said, a cleaner pocket, see some guys open and hit the read and let the receiver get the ball and go is a huge thing. Just visually, I think, just something to think back on moving forward. So let's just hope he keeps it up. I expect, again, another half, probably first half is all he'll get in this next game. I just hope he keeps it up, and I just hope he's ready to roll because it's coming. This schedule's coming at us pretty quick here in the next couple of weeks.
It is coming. Next week we'll start the bigger games with Wake Forest, and then a tough physical defense of NC State. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Okay, fellows, a game we were texting back and forth on, Alabama and Texas, right here in my backyard. Except my backyard doesn't hold 101,000 people. It was hot, and Alabama looked human, right? I mean, their defensive backs were continuously beaten by Texas wide receivers. Their wide receivers looked meh. It certainly wasn't the wide receivers of the previous Alabama teams that I've seen with the Jerry Judys and those type of guys. Fox, you're a SEC honk. What'd you see in Alabama, Texas?
Come on, boys. Let's get it together. I hate to be in practice this week, but too many penalties. How many penalties did they have? It was some type of
15.
record. 15? 14? Yeah. Something like that?
15, and some were declined.
Yes, absolutely. That's not a Nick Saban team for sure. I'm sure he got to chewing on him a little bit for sure this week. Lots of running, lots of laps. So, it's experience too. That's Marty. You said it. This is why the SEC doesn't, in Alabama especially, schedule road non-conference games because something like this could happen, and it almost did happen. But you can't score with 1:29 left on the clock, and they just march right down the field. And you still have the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback on your side, and he proved that on that last drive. Made a great play to get the first down and get them in position to kick the final field goal.
When Texas kicked that field goal, I said in my head, I didn't type it and text it you guys, but take my word for it. I said in my head, he just gave Alabama the game. Yeah. I knew it, and then I typed you guys or texted you guys and said they left too much time on the clock. Beef, what a great game! What's your takeaway? Texas, Alabama.
Yeah, undisciplined Alabama. We haven't seen that ever. Will Anderson had some ungodly amount of penalties. He only made one tackle, but his one tackle was a sack at the end when he really needed it and really stalled the drive for Texas when they were driving before they kicked the field goal to go ahead before they lost again. But you're so right, Marty. And don't rip that audio, please.
Oh yes.
Mark that down. What time is it?
Damn. I say it every week in NFL when it's on, and I don't really have a dog in the hunt in that league. So anytime that a team scores or kicks a field goal to go up 1 or 2, if there's under 2 minutes left, there's too much time. There's just too much time. I've seen it way too often. I've seen that movie before and know how it ends. That's exactly what I thought as well. So it's scary that we're thinking the same wavelength, but I thought way too much time, especially for Bryce Young.
Yeah.
And that offense.
Yep. They didn't run the ball well. They didn't do – Bryce Young was the only thing that, like I said, the receivers weren't special. Now they're going to crush Monroe or whoever, whatever directional Louisiana school ends up in Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, wherever they're playing this week. But they did not. I haven't figured out if it's Texas or it was Alabama, but Alabama looked human. I mean, like I said, their defensive backs were getting toasted regularly by a 5'10", 168-pound guy from the Hunter Renfrow type guy. Hey, figure.
How about this side, though? Is Texas good?
Well, maybe? We'll find out in my bets this week, won't we?
Let's just put it this way. They played some defense, which is surprising and kind of fun to see for once. It wasn't just like bounce off of the offensive player with 5 people and then they run for 50 yards. So they were wrapping up. It seemed like it was a little different team than you've seen in the past. So that was fun at least. But
and their offensive play calling early was very creative too. When they had Quinn Ewers, and then once he went down, it kind of got stale and stagnant with Hudson Card for a little bit, and then they kind of opened it up a little bit more for Card towards the end. But yeah.
Well, he was playing on one leg, but here's the thing: I've been very critical of Quinn Ewers for making $5 million for 2 snaps. The guy looked like the real deal, and he certainly looked like he wasn't scared of being in front of 101,000 people. Right. He looked like the real deal. So Texas could be on their way back. Once he gets back. I said on the way. I didn't say they were back. That's funny. Let's see. John Chansey says, good with Ewers, slightly above average with Card. Yep, I think that's why Mr. Ewers was the starter and Card is going to back up. Okay, we don't even have to leave the state of Texas to find the next crazy game. Texas A&M loses to Appalachian State 17-14 in College Station, of course, because they're in the SEC and they're not going to make the mistake that Alabama made by going on the road. A&M takes down Appalachian State takes down Texas A&M. The A&M offense, I didn't see this game, but I heard the A&M offense was horrid for the balance of the game. Locks, you're our SEC honk. Let's hear it.
Once again, A&M just does not have a quarterback to rely on, and it was very obvious in that game. They just had nothing to fall back on, and App State was hitting on all cylinders, just enough to get by, obviously. But I think it's great. It's a great story. It couldn't have happened to a better team. I'm not a huge A&M fan, even though they're still ranked after that. It's shocking every single time this happens. But they still have a tough schedule ahead of them, obviously. So they may not be around much longer. I don't know if anybody saw the article that came out on Sunday about App State, how awful their night after the game was. Their flight got canceled, so they all checked out of the hotel after the game, got to the airport at 3:30 in the morning. Their airplane was not boardable. They went back to the hotel. Hotel was sold out. They all had to sleep in the lobby, in like boardrooms and stuff. Turn around, go back to the airport like 6. They didn't get back to Boone until like 2:00 in the afternoon. All the kids, I'm sure, were exhausted. So they had a long Sunday after that win. But they have college game day coming, so good for them.
They're college kids. They're used to sleeping on the floor. And,
that's right.
What a big win! What a big win for App State. Beef, your take on this game?
When are people going to learn? Maybe Jimbo App State can play, and maybe Jimbo isn't as great a coach as people lead you to believe he is. I don't know if. I mean, again, here we go. Could have been two schmoes next week, but there is a former Seton Hall Prep quarterback that's an offensive analyst for him down there. And I feel bad for him. He was actually the quarterback that came in when Jameis Winston got suspended for the half because he was screaming in campus for Florida State. So he went with Jimbo there. But McGuire is his name.
Sean
But
McGuire. Yeah,
Sean McGuire,
yeah.
But I just don't understand all this preseason love, and I had a couple pops on Saturday, so I tweeted out a thing that says maybe the SEC isn't as great as everyone wants you to believe preseason. With some of these teams, I mean, Texas A&M was a darling before the season started with all those paid recruits and things,
Yeah.
Allegedly. And then they lose to App State. It's wonderful. They have a tough one this week as well with Miami coming to town.
Mhm.
So it'll be a nice new test for them. We'll see what happens. I'm excited for that game.
They could be sitting at 1-2 before they ever hit the SEC West, right?
Yeah.
So, Yakers, Jimbo. I heard a joke today that maybe he's going to go to West Virginia next after he runs A&M in the ground. He moves on to West Virginia. Nelson asked, what two things did Trevor Lawrence, Kelly Bryant, and Chase Bryce have in common? I think we all know that. I saw that on Twitter, I think it was. There was a picture of the three of them. All have quarterback Texas A&M.
I got you.
Yeah, Locks didn't know. I'm sorry.
I didn't know. I don't have Twitter. One of my few vices I don't have.
That's what I these names here.
That's what I call you on Twitter. Twitterless Locks is, by the way. When I tell three. Okay, Casey is wearing the shirt. We all three were chatting about this. Marshall beat Notre Dame in Notre Dame Stadium. We all three felt for Pauk. We felt different things, but we all felt for him. What a crazy upset. And now Marcus Freeman is 0-3. Pauk says the bowl game shouldn't have counted, though. I think if he'd have won, he'd give him credit for it, right?
Yeah, it's usually how it goes.
I warned him preseason about hyping up a coach who'd won a total of 0 games. And I think 3 years ago was like a linebackers coach or something. Now he's the head coach of Notre Dame. And I said, look, Dabo's won 150 games and 2 national championships, and you're acting like Marcus Freeman. You got the coaching advantage when they play. And he said, yeah, good point. To Pauk's credit, he said, good point. But I could, feel that he still thought that Freeman was a better coach than Dabo. I have no idea why. That's just my take on it. But 0-3 Beef, and they lose to Marshall at home. Now, I remember when Clemson lost to Marshall, Tommy Bowden's, I think it was his first game, right? One of his first games. But anyway, Clemson has lost to Marshall, but not in the last 25 years or whatever it's been. What's your take on the Irish losing to Marshall?
There was a certain NFL quarterback who had a relatively good career named Chad Pennington at the helm of that Marshall team. So they had some players back in the day at Marshall. They weren't necessarily as Pauk put it on his podcast, 5'0", 100-0 pod, that they should have absolutely killed this Marshall team just based on their recruiting rankings and their star power and everything like that. But you can't spell Freeman without 3 L's, though, boys. So I feel bad for Pauk, but man, I love these upsets, and Marshall was the better team. I mean, if you watched the game at all, Marshall blew them up front on both sides of the ball. They made the big stops when they needed it. They created turnovers on defense. They took advantage of some really shoddy play calling, and I know Tommy Rees is getting the brunt of the Notre Dame hate this week, Notre Dame fan hate this week from his lack of creativity on offensive play calling. But yeah, I mean, Pauk thinks that they don't have many wins left in the season. They play Cal this week, an undefeated Cal team. I don't know anything about Cal, but I mean, it might be another test. If they're losing to Marshall, you never know. But I don't mind Freeman. I think he could be good. I love the way he's recruiting there. I love how his style. I mean, he is trying to mold himself a little bit in the Dabo likeness, and so I wish him luck. But every game except Notre Dame, every game except Clemson. Excuse me, misstep there. But yeah, I love these upsets. So as much as I like my buddy, I like these upsets a little bit more.
I don't know their full schedule, but I do know, listening to Pauk's 5'0" pod, they have BYU. Of course, they have Clemson and Southern Cal. That's 3 right there. So could be a tough, long season in South Bend. Locks, what's your take on this game?
Yeah, it's excuse me, it's going to be a tough road ahead of them, and they need to get right somehow. And I don't know where that starts at. The offense is it's bad. I mean, there's Iowa bad, and then there's Notre Dame bad. It's just a little bit ahead of it. Like there's nothing exciting going on in that offense. They went for it on fourth down. That's right. Ryan tuned in. I think they went for it on fourth down. It was the third quarter, I think, and it's right around the 50. And you're thinking, all right, they got 2 yards, no problem, and it's just stonewalled by Marshall. I was like, oh boy, here we go.
I think it was 3rd and 3, and then 4th and 2, and
they didn't even get a yard out of the two. So, and then I flipped it back. I was like, okay, well, this will change, and then it didn't. And then the interception. I was like, holy smokes! And there was no sense of like we got it, or we're gonna make it right, or it's gonna be okay. It was just like, oh god, now we have no offense to come back from behind. So it's one of those teams that has to get out to a lead, and they don't have a fiery offense to start with a big lead. So if they're going to have a lead, it's not going to be 21 points off the rips unless they get a defensive score. I don't think so. You look at teams like USC, they're putting up points like crazy. Clemson can score. I think eventually by the time we play them, we'll have that figured out. BYU looks great as well too. So and who knows, they may have another surprise ahead of them. I hope they don't, because I feel bad. I agree with Casey that the chaos is fun and all, and it's kind of funny that it's a national brand like Notre Dame, but at the same time, to be a Notre Dame fan and to be at week 2 and be like, damn, like we got a long season ahead.
Yeah, no doubt. I lost my train of thought on what I was going to say. Oh, when your big play is like your tight end catching, he's a big guy. Yeah. He's not Davis Allen out there going over the middle, though he can, and he did against Clemson, I think. But your big play is a 9-yard pass to your tight end on the sideline.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it on Rubbing the Rock during the summer. They lost a running back. They're very thin at running back, very thin at wide receiver, as we saw. They have no downfield threat, and they've got an inexperienced quarterback. They all of a sudden they went from number 6 or whatever they were preseason, 5 or 6, and now they could have a losing season theoretically. I mean, Pauk, understandably he's really down, and how are we going to win 3 or 4 games or whatever. We saw some of this last year though. Remember, they barely beat Toledo. They had to rally in the last few minutes to beat Toledo. I don't know. State. Yeah. And Pauk, he's not the only Notre Dame fan. A lot of them thought it was Brian Kelly, and it seems like it runs deeper than Brian Kelly in South Bend, Indiana. Okay, fellas, this week we got Florida State at Louisville, Georgia at South Carolina. So we have a pick on that game. Oklahoma, Nebraska, we have a pick on that game. Penn State, Auburn, we have a pick on that game. Texas Tech and NC State, interesting game in the state of North Carolina. South Florida at Florida. Nobody's talking about this. This is the Dabo Bowl, right? The former 2 offensive coordinators. Nobody ever says Billy Napier is a former Clemson offensive coordinator. He belongs to Nick Saban these days. Then UTSA at Texas, and I've got a pick on that game. Miami at A&M. Fresno State at Southern Cal. That was an almost pick for me. So any of those games that you guys want to pick out and talk about? Beef, let's let you go first.
What Louisville team is going to show up against Florida State? That'll be interesting. Florida State has been really good to start their year. Granted, they played Duquesne in one of their games, but Jordan Travis looks fantastic. Malik Cunningham at Louisville, you're not sure what you're going to get from him. Looking awful against Syracuse, but then looking really like Malik Cunningham against UCF. So I'm interested in that game, especially because it's obviously the last season of the ACC Atlantic, but it has a lot to say in our division, Clemson's division of the ACC. Georgia, South Carolina, I just hope Georgia holds it up within 100. Actually, no, they can score 100. I'd be all right with that. And then the NC State Texas Tech. I don't know enough about Texas Tech. I tried to do a little bit of homework on them, and I know Sonny Cumbie, who's the head coach at Louisiana Tech, was the OC there. So I'm curious about high flying offense of Texas Tech as they're known to be against that defense at NC State and Devin Leary at quarterback. So I'm interested in that game too. We'll be at a tailgate at Clemson, and hopefully that game will be on in the background.
Nice. Locks, what you got on this group of games or any other one you want to talk about?
Well, I'll put on the record. I was the one that said that week 2, the line, the games look terrible. And how'd that work out? Week 3, I was like, God, these games look terrible. They're not that bad, y'all. I mean, there's some decent matchups here. And I didn't realize this Florida State-Louisville game is actually tomorrow night, too. So that'll be a fun one to watch. Penn State-Auburn, to me, I think that's going to be fun. 2 evenly matched teams. Obviously, neither of them is ranked, but it's still going to be a battle. It's my 3:30 slot. You knew I had to talk about that one. So, but yeah, I mean, there's fun games across the board. Miami A&M is going to be interesting to see how A&M responds, and if Miami comes in there guns ablazing, I don't know. It could be another 2 in a row for Jimbo. Boy, they'd be calling for his head. That'd be fun to see. So we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it again, though. This past weekend, I had a lot of fun just flipping channels, watching all those games. It was a ride.
It was great. It was the wife and kid left about 1:30 on 1:30 my time. So right before that 2:30 kickoff game started,
Yep.
and 2:30 window started, and it was a lot of fun. But I could not make it to see the Mormons beat the Baptists. I had to wake up in the morning. I had it on the phone, laying down in the bed. I had it on the phone, but didn't make it. Once the field goal went, whichever way it went, right or left, I don't even remember. I was like, I was out. So lots of fun last week. So, all right, let's get ready to go on the record, fella, with this week's picks.
I don't think you could have done any worse if you tried.
Well, I take that as a victory.
These guys are doing research, so why should I? Beef, you stink the most.
A true believer in what they're doing in North Carolina. That's why I'm picking Virginia Tech, Tennessee.
I love Spencer Rattler.
I agree with Marty.
I don't like this.
Look, you smell it, the backdoor cover.
So in that one, we had an I agree with Marty. Now we have Beef saying, Marty, you're right. You're so right. I'll have to edit that out this week. Okay. I don't have a fancy graphic for the standings. The Locks is 6-0 against the spread. He has 14,020 Sluggo bucks, 40% increase in 2 weeks in his Buckarooskies. Casey the Beef Cregan is in second place with a 1-5 record, 6,909.09 Sluggo bucks. Pulling up the rear, even though he's 3-3, is myself. I got 6,772.73 on.
I have a question.
Yes.
If I was not in first, would there be a fancy graphic? No, maybe no. Never mind. It's okay.
I would like to invoke my Fifth Amendment right to avoid self-incrimination. Revoke.
Sorry.
You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That's a great question. That's a great question. I think we all know the answer to that. I'd have bells and whistles and things spinning around.
Ric Flair.
Ric Flair would definitely be 100.
There would definitely be a Ric Flair sighting or two, like this.
I'm the man.
That's
I thought
usually well, you know how it goes. Okay, Locks. First place Locks. He's going to go last, I assume.
Absolutely.
Beef, you want to go first or?
Let me go first this week. Mix it up. I'll mix it up so that you don't have to. I'm going to start out with Rutgers and Temple. I'm going to go, I don't know the number, minus something or other.
16.
But 16. Rutgers has been on fire. Yes, they played Wagner. They beat not a good Boston College team, but I just think Temple may be a half step above Wagner, and they put a 66 burger up against Wagner. So I have faith in my Shiano and my boys from the Raritan. We're going to go Rutgers minus 16.
For how many Sluggo bucks?
$303.03.
303. E104.
Just
Very
multiply that by 3. It's 90909. So I'm just going, when I lose all 3 games, I'm just going to be at 6,000 Sluggo bucks next week.
I've
Come
got
on,
it. I've got
man.
it. All right. I am going to go money line. I learned my lesson from Locks last week. I'm going to take the Syracuse money line against Purdue. Here's the weird thing. I'm not even getting plus money on this. It's minus 105. But it beats minus 110, right? So small line. I've seen it. Syracuse +1, Syracuse -1. I'm not even sure where it's at. I'm just going to take Syracuse money line minus 105. I'm going to go 500 Sluggo bucks on the Syracuse money line. Zach, Locks, Parker, undefeated.
Undefeated. So we feel like the streak has to end this week. So I'm going to start off with one of the worst offenses in college football. I'm going to pick the Iowa-Nevada game, and I'm going to take Nevada 21.5 points because I don't know if Iowa can score 21 points. They are terrible. Right around, hovering around 150 points a game. 150 yards a game. They've scored only 7 points
would be
in
a
this
record.
game. Yeah, it would be. The over/under is only 39. I actually even considered the money line because Nevada, they may come in and beat them. I don't know, but I'm going to go with Nevada for $800 here.
Nice. Locks.
Still betting. Still, if I have a bad week, you guys can get back into it.
That's
when you have a bad week.
That's right.
Casey the Beef Creek in your second pick.
I got Louisiana Tech minus 31. I put on Rock Howard's Twitter this afternoon when he asked the question of should Clemson be on upset alert. I said they absolutely should. I got roasted by a couple folks, rightfully so. I'll take it. I just don't think with this air raid offense that Sonny Cumbie is bringing into Death Valley, and the fact that air raid is built on slants and balls, zero yard throws behind the line of scrimmage, screens, everything that has beaten Clemson so far this year, that's what they're built on. And then trying to take the top off. I don't know. I think the Clemson DBs are good enough, but these little 5'7", Smoke Harris is listed at 5'7", 180 pounds. So this dude's probably 5'4", 155 pounds, and he is a little. I think Dabo called him. Their quarterback is pretty good at getting the ball out quick. I'm not saying Clemson loses, but I think this is going to be a lot closer than people expect. And I'm a little bit nervous to be in the stadium at 8 o'clock. Not to say they're losing, just because of what we saw last week. There's that little piece. My friend Smitty said he's going to do some things, bodily harm to me, if I bring it up around the tailgate. But I don't think Louisiana Tech has enough to win. But I think that 31 number, and I know it's 34 now, I think that 31 number is way too big. So give me Louisiana Tech plus 31.
I was going to say, I think you meant plus 31, but
yeah.
As I mentioned, I saw them play Missouri. They had 3 touchdowns of 60 yards or more against Missouri. The game was over, right? But the gentleman you mentioned, Casey, had a long touchdown reception. He had 2 more. 2 of those came from the backup quarterback. As I said, the game was over. But they can throw it long. And as Dabo said Tuesday, they better be ready because this team here, let me tell you, can spin it, is what he said. They can spin it. How many bucks?
The quarterback came from Texas Tech. I mean, that's all they've known. He's played in this system. Parker McNeil is his name. 30303.
Oh, that's right. 30303. How
keep it simple.
How dare I make the mistake?
Math.
It's not my friend. All right, I'm going with another money line here. And Zach, you talked about this game earlier. Close, another small number. I'm going with the home team here. I'm going to take the Auburn Tigers to upset Penn State in a close game. I expect a close game. I realize this is going to be a coin flip either way. I'm willing to bet on the SEC team at home, even though Penn State's used to playing in front of a whole bunch of people. I'm going to take Auburn here, and I'm going to put another 500 Sluggo bucks It's plus 135 is where I got it. So I see some value there and hope the Auburn Tigers can not screw up until next week and Brian Harsin can hold on for one more week. Locks, who you got?
I scrambled. You guys saw me on Sunday. I was trying to lock in two lines big time right when they came out, and this next one I felt great about. Right, I got Oklahoma 13.5. And what did the line do? It dropped. Now it's at 11. I was, they're playing Nebraska after everything that happened to them, and right when the lines came out is right when they fired Frost too. So I'm thinking, I got to get in. It went the opposite way. So I don't know what I'm thinking here. I'm kind of scared, but just looking at the numbers, Nebraska gave up 642 yards to Georgia Southern, 528 to Northwestern, 300 something to North Dakota, a game that they won. They're a mess. Their head coach is out. I don't see them playing inspired, especially versus Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma is going to Nebraska. I still think Oklahoma will cover with 13.5. Put me down for just 600 here because I'm a little confused. Let's just say that.
Well, if we didn't let you bet when you were confused, you wouldn't have any bets at all. All right, exactly. Casey, your third bet for 30303. I got it.
My third bet for 30303 is going to Gainesville, Florida, a game that I've been to in the past. University of South Florida, the Fighting Jeff Scotts are going to travel up to the Fighting Billy Napiers. I just don't. USF is getting better. How about saying it that way? They got blown out by BYU, but we're finding that BYU is actually pretty good. I think they lost by 30, only 31 that game. Then they played Howard a week ago and beat a good Howard team by 21 points. So they're getting better. They're 1-1.
Howard who?
Yes.
Well, there's only one guy. 11 guys beat up on one poor Howard.
What's his last name?
So the Fighting Jeff Scotts are traveling up I-75 up to exit 300, and I don't know. I'm just kidding. To Gainesville to play Billy Napier. Napier just got beat by Kentucky last week in a very physical, very good game. They didn't look all that great. The line's 24.5. I'm going with Florida, 24.5. I think they just put it on. This is kind of their get-right game. And
angry.
One game closer to Jeff Scott returning to Clemson in some sort of role.
Of course. Come on home, Jeff. Come on home. All right, my third and final game. Now, this is very similar to Locks. I jumped on this game when it was 13.5, thinking it would shoot through the 14-point mark and I would miss a good number, but it went down to 11.
Yeah.
So what do we know about the point spreads and which way they're going to go? I don't know. I kind of understand it, right? I am going to take Texas minus 13.5 against UTSA, who won me a game last week against Army in overtime. But here's the thing. I watched most of that game. They didn't really impress me. UTSA, that is. They have lost to Houston in triple overtime. They beat Army in overtime. Guess what? Neither one of those teams is as good as Texas. We talked about it earlier in the show. What does Texas have? They have athletes that can play with Alabama. UTSA does not. I realize the quarterback for Texas, yours is out. I realize Hudson Card has a sprained ankle, it looked like. But what does Texas have? Texas has Bijan Robinson, who all Hudson Card has to do is turn around and hand the ball off to. Xavier Worthy on the outside, who made Alabama's defensive backs look silly. So Texas, and as Locks, you talked about their defense earlier, they look like they come to play. Now, maybe they'll be down a little bit and they'll hang around for a half or so. I don't know. This game is in Texas, in the heat. It's not in the Alamo Dome where UTSA plays. It's outside in the heat that wilted Alabama last week. I'm going to take Texas minus 13.5. And because I want to put a little pressure on Locks, I'm going with $2,000 here on the Texas Longhorns. A couple things I never do is bet on Texas and say they're good. I just did it. I think they're good. I think the guys on the Cover 3 podcast, they were talking about how they were celebrating a loss. I mean, come on, they didn't lose by 30. They're picking apart a team that played Alabama nose to nose and very easily could have won the game and probably should have if there wasn't some stupid call in the end zone by a referee who said he was told the wrong thing and, blah, 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 blah. That would have been a safety. Alabama would have punted the ball away. My point is Texas is good. I'm not saying they're back. I'm saying they're better and they care just like Florida State does. 2,000 on Texas minus 13.5. Locks, your final pick.
Final game. Had to go back to my boys in the SEC and stand with the Georgia Bulldogs here. Traveling to our favorite, University of South Carolina, favored by 25.5 points. Once again, jumped on this thinking it was going to explode. It went down to 24.5. So I'll take 25.5. I don't think it matters. USC lost their starting linebacker and defensive end this week. Both had torn ACLs done for the year. USC is 129th in rush defense. Georgia gives up an average of 1.5 points per game so far, and they did play Oregon. Let's not forget that. And I hate to say it because I'm not a huge fan of him, but Stetson Bennett is looking really good. He uses his legs, gets out of the pocket, still completes passes. 24-34, 25-31 past two games, over 300 yards in both of them. I think they are going to destroy South Carolina. Put me down for $1,200 on this one.
$1,200. Okay, let me pull up the graphic. I'm so good at this stuff. Casey has taught me well.
120303. No.
Okay, locks. Let's start out with the guy in first place. Nevada plus 21.5 for 800. Oklahoma minus 13.5 for 600. Georgia minus 25.5 for 1,200.
Yep.
And Casey the Beef Cregan's easy to do. He's 30303 on all of them. Rutgers minus 16. La Tech plus 31, despite what Casey said, and Florida minus 24.5. Myself, I'm going 500 on the money line on both Syracuse and Auburn. 2,000 on Texas minus 13.5 because I think the Longhorns are going to come out and play, and I believe in the Texas Longhorns. Cut that one, fellas. You can snip that out of there. When they lose this week, get upset. All right, Casey the Beef Cregan. I think there was something I wanted to do before, but I can't remember right now, whatever it was. Anyway, tell the people good night, and thanks for watching.
Thanks so much to everyone in the Seldom Used Reserve College Football Discussion Facebook group, especially Nelson Wilhite for all his help, John Chansey for being a good all-around guy, Uncle John McGee, as always, everyone in the Sluggo podcast, and I lost my sheets. Each and every one of you who listens, likes, shares, and participates. You'd figure after 100-plus shows I'd have this memorized. Not the case. On behalf of Marty, Seldom Used Reserve, Coleman, Zach Locks Parker, I'm Casey the Beef Cregan. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you right here next week on Sluggo.
I remember what it was. My shirt. I got this personalized message from the general. It's otherwise known as a receipt.
I think we're done here.